Our next speaker comes from one of Norway's oldest and biggest studio. He has worked on games like Age of Conan, Secret World, and The Park. So please welcome Funcom's creative director, Joel Bylos.
Thank you. Hey guys, thank you. It's very exciting to be here. This is the first time I've ever been invited to Konsoll. It's very exciting to be able to talk to people, to get in touch with the Norwegian development community, and give you guys a little bit of insight into, hopefully, a little bit of insight into Funcom and sort of some more of what's going on rather than what you read in the headlines. So I'll start by just mentioning who I am. I'm Joel Bylos. I'm the creative director at Funcom. And guys, let me tell you, I've been trying to wreck Funcom from the inside out for many years because multiplayer games are really fucking hard to make. And they disgust me because of their difficulty. And so I've been trying to convince Funcom for about 10 years, hey, let's go back to doing single-player games. And they keep telling me no. And then a couple of years ago, they said, okay, you can make one single-player game and you have 3 months and 2 people. So we made this game called The Park, which did pretty well and we were very happy with. And it was kind of an experiment to see how well we could use the Unreal Engine. And I was super glad because we got rid of all these MMO features. We didn't have to make a chat, we didn't have to make clans, we didn't have to make all of these features where you have to care about what everybody else on the server is doing. And The Park did pretty well and we were very happy. And so after that I said, all right, I've proven this can work. What are we going to do next? And they said, we have an idea for a game. It's a survival game. It's called Conan Exiles. And I said, cool. And they're like, and Joel, it's not an MMO. I was like, wow, I'm very excited about that. Yes, but you'll have to implement chat. And you'll have to implement server mechanics. Basically, we have to implement all the features of an MMO. So thanks very much, Funcom. All right, so trigger warning. This is just in case people get offended by bad language. I swear a lot, and I will try to be good, but I'm bullshitting you, and don't fucking judge me. All right. Australians use swearing as punctuation. We end our sentences with it, so something I do. But there's another dirty word that I'm going to use today, and people don't want to hear this out of the mouth of a creative director or a creative person, and that is money. People don't like to confuse art and making money from it, right? People think that, no, art is pure and you should work towards that. Well, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is actually strategies to try and make money. Because I know it's something as independent developers, I mean, it's hard to get started without anything, right? So I want to give you guys some ideas. And so this talk is kind of divided into 2 parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about what I do as a creative director, basically the kind of advice I give people who are starting at Funcom and how I break them down very quickly and then build them back up. And then I'm going to talk about early access, Conan Exiles, the approach we took and how we brought that game into early access and how we made it successful. And I just wanted to sort of highlight that point about money because it's really important that you feel comfortable talking about money as independent developers, that you feel comfortable making money, that you can actually make decisions around making money because you need that to sustain your development. You can't reach your dreams without having some cash to get you off the ground. And rich people will always tell you that success is what matters and money is just a consequence of success. And while that is understandable because it's coming from rich people, generally you don't get to the success point without having some sort of starting base. So don't judge me for that either. I am going to talk about money as a creative director. So a lot of people ask me this, what exactly does a creative director do? And I could do the entire presentation about this one, but I'll try to keep it brief. I break new designers. That's really one of my first jobs. And I'm going to go through my rules for breaking a new designer. General rules and principles that I hope apply to everybody. I massage designs. This means that if we're making a game that has a particular type of theme, for example, a barbarian game, then I take the combat design that looks like something out of Naruto and I make it feel barbaric. And I tell them what do we need to tweak and how do we need to change this to get there? And that can be art, it can be design, it can be audio, it can be all of those facets. So my job is basically reviewing what we're doing and pushing it towards the actual creative vision for the game. Now, let's see. Think about and know the things that nobody else thinks about or needs to know. So, it's hard to talk about Conan Exiles without talking about dicks, because it's generally one of the things I get asked about the most, especially when I talk to press, because they are apparently fascinated that people can be naked. And the answer I always give press when they ask me about, oh, why do you have dicks in Conan Exiles, is just because, well, like we have a boob slider, it's fine, it's quality, why not? There's no reason not to have it. It fits with our setting. But there's another layer to this that I think kind of is an example that highlights what I do and why I need to think about these things. So Conan Exiles is a survival game, and you start the game naked because at the beginning of the game, the character will be at their most vulnerable. And everybody's had that dream where they're naked in a classroom, or hopefully everybody's had that dream, maybe not. Maybe someone else was naked in your dream. But in any case, if you've had that dream, you understand that being naked is about vulnerability. And for the start of Conan Exiles, I wanted to instill in the player a feeling of vulnerability. It doesn't mean it works. It doesn't mean every single person that plays the game understands that. It doesn't mean that everybody gets that I was trying for vulnerability. But it's my job to have thought about it and to understand why we made that decision. And it builds a sort of trust with the team, especially with a team of 35 people that we are working on Conan Exiles. Those guys can come to me and they can ask me, why are we doing this? And I have an answer that isn't just superficial. I would say 95% of the time, because I have to think about these things. It's part of my job. And finally, the last part of my job is I get to pitch new projects, which is not as glamorous as you might think, but we'll talk about that as well. So, this slide's about my 10 commandments of design, which I use to break all designers when they start at Funcom. It's not really going to hurt anybody, don't worry. Thou shalt play. This is super, super important. I would say this is the number one thing that people really fuck up in large companies. You need to play the game you're making. You need to understand it. You need to know it inside and outside. You need to play it on a console. You need to play it on a PC. You need to play it till your thumbs break. You need to understand your own game. Because how can you fix it if you don't understand what the players are going to be going through when they get to it? And it's not just your game. You need to play lots of games. Because I wouldn't expect anyone to write a book without being able to read and without having read novels. I also expect people to have a general knowledge of how game mechanics work. And this is something that I really want to drive home. It's super important. Don't try to make a game about a game of a type that you've never tried or played. You should know everything there is to know about the genre that you're working in. This point, love your players or love thy players. So hard sometimes. Yeah, oh my goodness. You've got to get past this sense that you're right about anything. Players will tell you how stupid you are, what you've done wrong, and they'll tell it to you in a way that is not gentle. And you just have to learn to love it. You have to feel for them, because every time you write a design, every mechanic that you put into your game, you need to feel sympathy for the poor bastard who doesn't know how it's supposed to work and picks up your controller or picks up the keyboard and starts playing. You have to feel like, okay, this guy's coming into the game blind. He doesn't get this. And you need to feel sympathy for him and try to explain what you're trying to do. Function first. This is just a general tip when you're prototyping game mechanics. Make sure you get them working before you actually worry about polishing them, especially visually. Find the fun. There's lots of different expressions here that people use for this. It's the same thing. Get the function working first. Understand whether it's fun or not. Then add layers of beauty to it. Animate it to the full extent. Just find the function first. Thou shalt never be finished. Basically, this point is just never ever stop working on something. And if you think you're done, then you're doing it wrong. So nobody ever releases a game that is finished. They release a game that is at a cutoff point where, okay, it's probably acceptable, or, in Funcom's case, sometimes before it's acceptable, but we'll talk about that later as well. But you need to work on your mechanics, you need to work on your section, you need to take pride in polishing the hell out of everything you work on. And it's really important to understand that you probably don't get finished with something until somebody tells you it's done and we're launching. This one's always really controversial. Document thine intent. It's kind of crazy how much people hate writing down what their designs should be. I find it really weird, but then again, I'm a writer, so maybe it's just that I like words. But I don't really care about the exact sort of, if you push Y, it means jump, and da-da-da. That's not the important part. The important part is, what is the intent of the game mechanic that you are designing? What do you want the player to feel? How should the player interact with your game? And how should that mechanic make the player feel? Your intent is what matters, because QA can tell you this doesn't work, but what you really want to know is, does it evoke the things that you want it to evoke? So another thing that I always tell new designers. Yeah, this is pretty obvious and common sense, but still, thou shalt fuck up and thou shalt learn from it. This is really important. People fuck up all the time. It's part of life. It's actually how we learn. It's how we move forward. It's really important to have those fuck-ups. Nobody is perfect, and if they tell you they're perfect, then they're lying. So just be aware. There'll be pitfalls, and guys, Funcom fucks up all the time. But, the important thing is to try and learn it from it and take something away from it. And we do that. We try to make processes that avoid this fuck-up next time. Be humble. Nobody's good at everything. I've rarely in my career met people who are great artists, fantastic writers, amazing game designers, and fantastic programmers. You need to ask for help, and you need to be humble about it. You need to be able to say to people, I need your help to figure this out. I need your help and your input to put this part of the game together, or to put this entire game together. We're talking about the importance of team. Being humble is the best way to approach other people on your team and get their help and create new things. Action, not words. This is kind of the point that you was making about Owlboy, I think, as well. Do the work. A game that's written in a design document and a game that's in your head are not games that you can sell, and they're not games that exist. So do the work. It's really important to sit down and actually make the game you want to make. Maybe easy for me to say because I work at a fairly large company and I go to work every day, but sometimes you just got to do the work, and that applies to everything, including writing, and making games. Mind tools are the best tools. This one's kind of just about how you take mindsets. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of information on the internet about design mechanics. You should be plowing into this, understanding it, learning the mindset of design rather than worrying too much about learning the specifics of Unity or Unreal or our proprietary engine at Funcom Dreamworld, or figuring out Game Maker, right? It's important to learn the actual mindsets of design because those carry over wherever you go in the industry. You can work anywhere if you're a functional designer. You probably can't work anywhere if the only thing you can do is blueprint in Unreal, and that's your very specific focus. So you need to be a well-rounded designer in the mindsets that you have and the approach to design. Thou shall have fun. Oh, I forgot the shalt there. Shoot me. The idea here is, and again, when you work on a game for 10 years, as you mentioned earlier, it's hard. Some of our projects have been 7, 8 years long, and it's hard to always find the fun when you're working on these big slog projects and you might feel like a cog in a big machine. So having fun is kind of, it's why we're here. It's why we make games. It's why we want to make games. I hope nobody's doing it for the salary, and I sure as hell hope nobody's doing it for the fame. We should be doing it because we love it. And having fun in your game, having fun in other people's games, having fun and enjoying the job, that's why you get up every day and go to work. And that's how you get to do the work. Okay, super serious. I just want to talk about ideas being cheap. Ideas are super cheap. This is a pitch I made for a game from 2011 Does it remind you of anything that's on the market now? Dino Riders meets Civilization meets Minecraft. Ark Survival Evolved, anybody? Ideas are cheap. And if Funcom had made this game, we probably would have failed. So one of the things that I always tell new designers and independent developers is don't worry about your ideas. They're not precious at all. Like, there are people at work who come to me with 100 ideas a day for different things. Ideas are absolutely meaningless. It is execution that matters. It is your experience in the execution of your game that matters. So you shouldn't hoard ideas for games. Of course, people have good ideas, don't get me wrong. Some ideas are very valuable on their own, but they're not the reason those games succeed. People have a good idea and then they execute on that idea. And that's what matters. So this was just an example of how, I pitch probably, I would say I pitch 50 to 100 projects a year at Funcom. We haven't made any of them. Not one. Maybe I'm a bad pitcher, that could be the reason. But I think actually the reason is, as I'll talk about, there's business reasons, and sometimes my pitches are just random. Sometimes I'm pitching to something that I'm asked to pitch towards. But game ideas, they come and they go. Don't get too caught up in, I have this unique idea, I don't want to tell anybody because they'll steal it. That never happens. And what actually happens is companies that can execute on a great idea do well, extremely well. All right, so that's the first part, me bullshitting about being a creative director and talking about what I do. Now I'll talk a little bit about Funcom and a little bit about early access. So Funcom, you've heard of us, right? Most of you, I assume. People living in Norway, at least. Yes, I'll start with Age of Conan. Age of Conan we released in 2008. It was a pretty good game. I was a quest designer on that game. It did extremely well. It made a lot of money, and it had a lot of people who really liked it, but it had some big problems as well, huge core problems to the game, and that was because Funcom took on a challenge that they probably couldn't technically handle. So it was both up and down. The press likes to write a lot, the financial press in particular, because stock prices go up and down, they like to write a lot of negative things, but in general the game was a big achievement for Funcom. And we released the expansion, Rise of the Godslayer. That's when I did my first game as a lead designer, which was a very interesting learning experience for me. And we released the expansion. And then the Secret World. Now, the Secret World was actually a technically much more proficient game than Age of Conan. It was a much better, stable, much improved version of what Age of Conan's engine was, but it just doesn't seem like people really wanted to buy it. Jane had a great point about launch windows. The Secret World launched in a terrible place between Diablo 3, a World of Warcraft expansion, Guild Wars 2. It was a bad year to launch a game that was a bit niche, and it did extremely poorly, and Funcom went from a company of 400 people to a company of about 100 people in about a year. So that was a huge change and downturn for the company. But then came Lego, our saviors. This great IP that was going to sell billions of copies to children all over the world. And we worked really hard on that game. And we worked really hard on our reputation as a company that releases somewhat buggy games. And Lego was probably technically the most solid release we've ever had. Incredibly polished, worked extremely well, nobody gave a shit and nobody bought it. And so that put Funcom in an even more dangerous situation. Because, that's one of the things that I'm sort of one of the points I like to make about money is it's difficult to talk about creative visions and being excited about things when you have 50 people who rely on you to get paid and to be able to feed their families. So it's not a negative thing to want to make money to keep people employed. Finally, the park, I already sort of mentioned that. That was just an experiment. It was a technological experiment to see how quickly we could make a game in Unreal, and then we completely ignored all the things we learned on the park and made a really hard game to make in the form of Conan Exiles. So, Conan Exiles. We decided to make a game and put it in early access. And this is how we chose the way we would approach this game. Because as we already had a relationship with the people who owned the license for Conan, and we were working with them. So this is advice to you guys. How would you choose a path? How do you decide which game to make? Because as I talked about, yes, it is important to make a game with your values, and that's actually my first point. Motivation. Do you and your team want to make this type of game? That's a huge factor. It's super important. At the time when we decided to make Conan Exiles, we were all playing Ark, Rust. We were really into the survival genre at the time, and lots of guys at the office, we had been renting servers together. We had an actual Funcom server set up in our office, and we were all playing these games. And so it was a good time for us. It was a genre that we were interested in. Knowledge. Does the team have the expertise to make the game? If you've been making 2D platformers for your entire career, and then you decide to make a 3D MOBA, it's probably not the expertise that matches up with what you can do as a team. Of course you can learn, but that's going to take time. And you have to have, again, capital, time, money to be able to do that. So does the team have the knowledge? In the case of Conan Exiles, yes. Our experience with multiplayer games, with MMOs, would indicate that at least it's a fairly decent fit for what we're trying to do. Profitability. Can you make money off this? And this is that magical point. You need to look at Steam Spy. You need to grab it. You need to figure out what games there are in that category, how they're selling, how have the trends gone? Are they selling more? Are they selling less? Do people like that type of game anymore? It's really important. You need to think about, will this make enough money to pay for the development? Will this make enough money to support the team for a longer time? Again, on your own, sure. Making $5,000 in Steam sales might be enough to make you happy for a little while, but you kind of want to make something that generates revenue to keep you supported and allows you to grow. That's the point. This is why we want to make a career as game developers, because we want to continue making games in the future. We don't want to make a one-off game and then not make any more money ever again. So it's important to think about profitability. Competition. Who and what are the competition and what are their games like? So now you've identified maybe the genre you want to work in, maybe you know if you can be profitable, but okay, I personally probably wouldn't make a team shooter right now because Overwatch is basically dominating everything. And if I did make the second best team shooter, it'd still be competing with Team Fortress 2. Look, let's not go there, right? Think about what you want to make. A couple of years ago, people kept telling me, make a MOBA. I'm like, oh yeah, we should totally make a MOBA. We'd be able to compete with Valve, Blizzard. Sure, why not? The point here is not to discourage you. If you really want to make a MOBA, you can. There's a company called what are they called? Stunlock Studios. I was going to say Stormfront. I was thinking of an old SSI game for some reason. Stunlock Studios in Sweden. Funcom actually owned them for a little while. They've made 2 great MOBAs, and Battlerite is their latest. And it's a really cool game, but for them, profitability means being at any point on the scale. If they're the 5th best MOBA, they're doing great. So I'm not saying don't make a MOBA, just be aware of who your competition is and be aware of where you fit. If the top 10 games are all made by Blizzard, then there's a very high chance that you will probably be number 11, right? If that. So you need to think about how you fit. And then you put it all together. You do an analysis, you use Steam Spy, you figure out the stats, and then you talk about where you fit on all of these scales and whether you should be making this game. That's a business type analysis. So we did this. We looked at the top 10 comparable sandbox titles on Steam. Ranging from Reign of Kings. This is about a year old, this data, just so we're clear. Reign of Kings had 476,000 sales, all the way down to, I think it was Rust. Rust had 4.5 million sales. And we said, can Funcom be better than the number 10 game? And if so, then we'll be getting around this number of sales. That was kind of our feeling and our thoughts about this. So that's how we did our business assessment. That's how we decided to go into early access. We took a quick look at the quality level of these games. Ark was by far the highest quality, visually at least. Gameplay-wise, at the time, it was still quite buggy, and I'll talk about our stupid assumptions around that. Rust, Reign of Kings, which was number 10, was actually quite ugly and very clunky to play. Hurt World, it was okay. And we figured, yeah, we can do a game that fits above the quality of the lowest tier here. And if we do that, we'll be hitting this number of sales, and that is making us profitable on this project. So that was the entire thinking process around this, right? So this is how we came forward to this decision, and hopefully this sort of process is the type of thing that you guys will actually do as well. So, early access. What is early access according to Valve? So this is what Valve say about early access. Be the first to play exciting new games, discuss and give feedback, help them test and report bugs, play the game as it develops. This is actually paid beta testing, and it's kind of something that the MMO industry started to do a while back, which is letting people have early access to the MMO. And then now it's sort of become more mainstream. So there's more early access games letting people in early to beta test. It lets you do server stressing. I'll talk about a whole bunch of stuff with this in a sec. But so you can see early access started, again, I only have data down to 2015 because I stole it from Steam Spy. And I didn't have time to put all the numbers in an Excel sheet and crunch them because I'm lazy. Do the work, Joel, do the work. In any case, you can see the number of games on early access per month just keeps going up. At this point, there's over 1,000 games in early access on Steam, which means the competition has increased, which means that the window for early access being a get out in the wild early, just like on iOS when the store opened, if you got your game on there early, you were guaranteed a certain amount of downloads. Now you're lucky to be in that 2 percentile that actually gets more than 10 downloads on iOS. It's the same thing. As the popularity of a platform increases, the more people want to use it, and the less chance of you getting noticed or marketing. So it's worth paying attention to. By now there's over 1,000 games. The average game spends 14 months in early access, and about 25% of the games that have actually released in early access have actually reached their full launch period. That was that was a while ago, but still, it's roughly the same. The stats haven't changed that much. Now let's talk about how early access has changed and the quality bar has gone way up. So, Fortnite. Who's heard of Fortnite? Hands up. All right, cool. Fortnite, Epic Games. Not exactly an indie developer, right? These guys have been working on Fortnite since 2011. And they just launched it in early access about 2 months ago. So, you're competing with a game by a AAA company that's been in development for 5 years. Or actually, yeah, 2011, 6 years, whatever. But yeah, so that shows you how the bar is changing in early access. Same with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Okay, it's not it's not exactly a game that's been in development for 6 years, but it's the third game by the same person. He first made mods, he then made H1Z1, or he helped them with their Battle Royale mode, and then this is his third iteration of a game design idea that he's doing with a Korean MMO developer called Bluehole. So this is not a coincidence. These games are increasing in quality on early access, and you need to think about that if you're going to go there. You need to be aware, and keeping in mind that these are similar games. So maybe there's an undertapped genre in early access. There are many genres undertapped in early access, I would say, but survival open world games seems to be one of the most gluttonous parts of early access. So maybe you shouldn't be making one of those type of games if you want to go early access. But there are other games which could succeed extremely well, and you just have to find that market cap if you're interested. Okay, Conan Exiles. So let's talk about how it went. So we released in early access on the 31st of January, and we sold 480,000 copies the first month. We aren't no Firewatch, but we did okay. We covered the development cost in a week. It's funny that our slides were kind of matching on these points. We did our Xbox release in August, and our full release on all platforms will be in Q1 2018. Just a point about that, the fact that we covered the development cost in a week, it's because we did that market research and we figured out where we would make money and how. Right? We all wanted to make a survival game. We all wanted to make a Conan game. So we knew how that would work out. But we needed to figure out where we're going to fit in the market gap. How is it going to work? You'll note the release date It's very similar to what Jane was saying again. we found a gap in the timing. When was a good week for us to release where we wouldn't bump into things like Horizon Zero Dawn and other big games? We did our research and it paid off. At least at the beginning, it paid off. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the one other point that I would make, we talked about only having, or Jane talked about only having one release. I do agree with that, but I also would add the addendum per platform, and that is we're staggering our release on platforms. We released on PC, we had a lot of buzz on the PC, then we released on Xbox in August, we had a lot of buzz on August, and then we're going to release on PlayStation 4 next year, and we'll have a lot of buzz on PlayStation 4. And the thing is, the core audience for those consoles aren't necessarily talking to each other. So if the release on PC went badly, then the Xbox crowd still might be more forgiving. And if it went bad on Xbox, the PS4 crowd don't talk to them. So there's this, so you do get more than one chance at a launch, I think, on multiple platforms. And of course, Nintendo Switch as well. If you can get your game on all of those platforms, I think it matters and it counts. So it's one thing to keep in mind as well. And I would say, I would say, beyond a shadow of the doubt, console work is way harder than people think. I've talked with a lot of indie devs who've made games for PC that they were porting. Red Thread Games, for example, in Oslo, I talk with those guys a bit. And it's never as easy as you think. People think, oh yeah, 2-3 months, there's a button in Unreal I can push that will convert my game to PlayStation 4 and then I can just run it. That never happens. So you need to allow a period of time. And in this case, I actually think it's really good. If you allow a gap, it lets people on that platform hear about your game for the first time. So, how's it all working out? This is how it's going on Steam. Yep. It's some of these people have played the game for 1,000 hours, and they refuse to recommend it. It's thumbs down, guys. I played this game for 1,000 hours. Fuck it. Can't stand it. Welcome to Early Access, guys. This is how we roll. This is what I was talking about. You've got to love the player base. And it is really important, actually, to pay attention. People are giving you a clear signal when they give you thumbs down. It doesn't mean it's a good signal. Sometimes people do review bombs for stupid reasons, but you've got to listen. You've got to try to figure out the signal from the noise. So before I talk into the reasons why we have so many thumbs down and what we're doing about it, I want to talk very briefly about the dynamics of early access. It's a great marketplace for ideas. This is why you would consider going on there. You want to test your idea. You can fail extremely fast on early access. If you put your game out there in a prototype form, something that you think works pretty well but is maybe not complete, people will test it and they'll let you know if they like the idea by giving you money, which helps you to fund further development. If we're talking multiplayer games, say you want to do that theoretical MOBA, you can grow a community for that. You can get people on board, listen to their ideas, bring them into your development process, and take their feedback. Exploit the exploiters. This is a big one. It's actually been really important for us. We have a shit ton of people exploiting our game, and that's completely fine because the game is not fully launched, and we can let people exploit, figure out what they're doing, and plug all the holes in the game so that by the time we actually launch the game and we tell people, play the game, it's great now, we're expecting that we won't have any exploits. And it's great. They keep finding really, really bizarre ways to break the game, which is really cool. But in the past, when we've released MMOs, people have found those after the game is live, and then people want their money back, or they're pissed off because someone did X and Y, and it can cause a real problem in a live game. In an unreleased game that we're going to wipe the servers of before we launch, it's quite okay to let people exploit, figure out what they're doing, solve them. Yes, we also released Conan Exiles with modding tools. This was a really good move for us because, first of all, it allows us to see what the most popular mods are, which means people are basically voting for features in the game that they don't have. And that gives us a direction to take certain things. But it also gives us an opportunity to hire skilled and passionate people. People who spend time modding your game obviously care. And I was talking about people who play the game. People who play the game, they play it a lot. You have an opportunity now to find those people and bring them in. And of course, that money thing again. You can make some money to fund further development in early access. And that's, again, I think it's probably more important for indie developers to get some cash flow and figure it out, because, from there, you can start to build on the game and make it better. You might need to hire that third artist, or that second artist, or just an artist, right? But having money helps. It always does. So here's some of the bad assumptions we made about early access. And I'll start by addressing Funcom's reputation. Basically, we release buggy games, and we do it a lot. And it's never been great, and we've made some big efforts in the past to try and fix that. We did it with Lego. I think that game was fairly polished. The park had almost no bugs, but it was a short, very focused experience. But we have a reputation, and we thought technical issues were probably acceptable in early access. People won't mind if the game's a little bit unstable. It's not correct. Crashes have been one of the biggest problems we've had. People are not forgiving. They're tolerant of in-game bugs, like bugs in the game, but they're not tolerant of the game crashing, and they're not tolerant of servers going down. People are very pissed off when that happens. So that would be one of the reasons for this. Yeah, this is my bad. Small negative iterations in pursuit of greater good will be acceptable. I assumed poorly at many points on this project that, we have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. And that's fine as long as you give people a chocolate cake with their omelette. But people are not happy if you take away something from them. It's kind of like when people adjust balance in World of Warcraft, when Blizzard does that. Whatever class got changed goes nut shit. When somebody gets nerfed, they hate it. If we, for example, change the way that sprinting mechanics work because combat doesn't work properly until we change the way sprinting mechanics work, and we have to make players slower in order to make our combat better. That is me as a developer having a developer mindset and going, change X here, fix Y here, make everything better for launch. But that really isn't how players read it. Instead, they're like, you fucked up sprint, combat's still the same. And it's not really how it works, but so we are addressing this. This is one of the things that is really important to remember. So when you are changing a live game or a game that people are playing, give them the whole package at once. Don't give them a piece of the package. Oh God, best in genre is meaningless. Yeah, holy shit. Wow, how do I take the blame for this one properly? We looked at Ark and we thought, oh God, look at the fighting in Ark. You just do this. And we looked at Reign of Kings and it's like, they're all just really crappy swing one hand animations, and we thought, Jesus, this is easy to be better than. We'll just make our combat slightly better than this. I don't know, halfway to Skyrim, that's good enough. Oh, it's so not. It's so not. That was a hugely bad assumption that we made. We thought being the best melee combat in the survival genre would be great. And it turns out that people have played other games with good combat, and that's what they want. So we now have to have an entire team of people, 6 full-time developers, purely working on combat. And it's going to be fantastic by the time we launch, but it's cost us a lot of goodwill along the way. So thinking about, our game is good, we're just better than the others. We're just slightly better than everybody else who does this. It's not good enough. You just need to make the mechanics good. And I should have known that, but time was tight and money was tight. Funcom was in huge amounts of financial trouble in April 2016, and we were almost bankrupt. This game saved us as a company. And so we were rushing. A lot of our design ethos there was trying to get things in to save the company. But it means we made bad assumptions. This is a really bad assumption to make, that your communication is reliable. People don't read Steam forums, funnily enough, like 20% of your player base maybe, if you're lucky. People don't read Reddit. Put the communication in the game client. Don't expect anybody to get your messages from the actual outside world. Don't talk. You can talk to them on Twitter, Facebook, forums. Just be aware, 95% of them will still be clueless about the message you want to get across. So make the communication happen somewhere else. This was a really bad assumption. People will know what early access is. We thought that people got what early access was. We assumed that when you buy a game that says, this is in early access right now, it's going to be buggy, Yeah, that didn't happen. People were like, whoa, this game's buggy, what the hell? It was really surprising, actually. So here's your challenge as a developer. Your game is not finished and you will be judged. And that feels like this. You are the nude person walking through the school corridor. Everybody is staring at you and looking at the things that you have on display, and you're going to feel extremely vulnerable because you're putting it all out there. Early access means completely different things to players and developers. I kind of covered this point, but it's really important to remember that you have developer mindset, they have player mindset. Have that sympathy for them. Feel for the players. I put this at the start of the game. You don't need to read the text, but it's basically, hey, you're playing an early access game. Early access, early access, early access, early access. They still didn't read it because they could click to get past it. We even made it stay up for 10 seconds to force people to read it, and they still didn't read it. And we actually did metrics on this. People were just like, oh, check my phone. Click. Beautiful. 10 seconds is up. Thank you, Funcom. So you cannot rely on, and that is in the game. So you can't rely on people to check forums to get information. This one's really important as well, and this is super important for developers. You can get into this, oh, I'm listening to all the feedback I have on my game now loop, and you can lose track of your vision. And I've seen it happen on games at Funcom in the past. Age of Conan, for example, was a PvP action MMO PvP game, really. It was supposed to be focused around these concepts of like huge siege warfare, and then World of Warcraft came out, and lots of people started asking for features from World of Warcraft. And management, that sounds like a blanket term. Various people were like, yeah, that's a good idea, World of Warcraft's a great game, we should take in more and more feedback. But what that did was stretch Funcom too far and add too many features, because you really need to pull things down and focus when you're making a game, and you need to decide what your feature set is and push for that. And so that is one of the things that caused Funcom to have bad technical launches in the past, is we've listened to too much feedback. And that's not to say that our vision for the game is always fantastic, but someone needs to own a vision and someone needs to push for that vision, and your focus should be on getting that vision in. And when players are playing your game, they're going to make a lot of noise. So I'll talk about one particular example. We had 12,000 servers running at launch. We had 400 official servers that Funcom actually had, and there were 12,000 other servers. And 90% of our feedback was from the people playing on those 400 servers. So there was a huge silent majority who weren't talking about the things that the people playing on the 400 servers were. And we focused a little too much on the feedback from the official servers, because we made adjustments and changes to make those people happy. That negatively impacted the other people who were playing on the 12,000 other servers, which is a much larger percentage of people actually playing the game. So it's really important to think about that. Make sure that you stay true to your vision and you don't cater to the loud voices. The competition grows stronger every day. We know. I've already talked about that. PR and community, more important than ever. Market your game. If you're in early access, just market it anyway. Get it out there. People are actually looking for cool games to play, and if you have a cool game, you want people to get it. Push trailers. Get people excited. And if you don't know how, contact Funcom. You can talk to our marketing department. You can talk to the guys there. It's completely fine to send an email and have a conversation with us about this, guys. We want Norway as a gaming community to succeed. And a rising tide lifts all boats, as you say. So feel free. Don't be afraid to take contact. pr@funcom.com is the correct email address to get in contact with us. And at the very least, we can help you with getting in contact with journalists. We can help you with... It's just, reach out. Don't be afraid to talk to other developers. An ongoing experiment. Okay, so some of the things we did to try and address and all the things that went wrong. I was talking about fuck-ups, lots of them in my career. Fast update schedule. We tried to update really quickly after we launched, make people excited, see how good a developer we were. We're just patching. And that backfired, and it completely destroyed the patch quality of our game. It made our patches 2 steps backwards, 1 step forwards, rather than 2 steps forward and no steps backwards, which is what they should have done. So we changed that immediately. We did a large content update in the form of a dungeon quite soon after launch. And we targeted level 30 players because we assumed that was where the player base was. We were wrong. All the level 60 players started giving us thumbs down on Steam because we were releasing content for not them. So it's really important, again, to not really target player demographics, but give people options, right? We could have made that dungeon work for 30s and 60s. We just didn't. This one might be a bit controversial. We did a community survey, and we generated a ton of positive buzz about the game because people were excited to vote on the features they wanted in the game. And unfortunately, we're probably going to have to cut some of those features before launch, and that's going to piss people off because they voted for them. So it makes the ghost. It makes us beholden to an older plan for development than the one we have, which is scary. But our recent patches have been getting more and more positive feedback, and our thumbs down to thumbs up ratio is switching, which is great. And that's because we've been taking into account these lessons and thinking about these things. So our road ahead now, what we're doing. We're releasing holistic updates. That means, my talk about small negative changes. All of our updates from now on going forward should be always 2 to 3 steps forward, and every feature that we tweak will have all the necessary ingredients in one package. So everything we do now is aimed towards having the game in a whole state for launch. We're moving more of our communication into the client. We're putting things on the main menu, which basically grab your attention when you start the game, saying, hey, pay attention to this message, it's important. And we're trying to get people to see this stuff. Now, I know that sounds like it can be annoying, but it's going to be done with my voice, and obviously that's an extremely sexy and exciting voice. So, no, I'm joking. But we're adding more communication into the client where we know more people will see it, because what we found is when people see it, they tell other people about it, which is nice. Our primary focus is on changing the reputation Funcom has by launch. So stability and polish for this game is perhaps the single most important thing Funcom can do for Funcom's reputation, but also for the game, to make the game good, solid, and polished. Our best launch ever. That is the goal. We're working really hard towards that. We really hope it works out. But I would say, on the advice scale, aim for stability when you enter early access, aim for polish when you launch out of early access. In summary, do your research, figure out what's going on, focus on technical stability before early access launch. Oh, geez, I just covered that point. Joel, what are you doing? Polish can be missing, but as the bar goes up in early access, it's important to have stable games. Communicate with impact. That means communicate where it matters to your players, communicate where players will see it, worry about getting the most eyes on it as possible. Do not worry about that, you have to add a little bit of an extra feature in the main menu to give people information. Don't worry about them being annoyed about nagging. That's not why they'll stop playing your game. If they see messages, they probably won't quit. If the game's buggy and unstable, or they feel like they're not heard as a community, then they'll quit. Market your game. I meant cover this point. Sell the game. Sell the game to people. Get out there, talk to people about it. Make sure people know about your game. There's no point in launching with no one having heard of it. And embrace the feedback. It's hard. It's really hard. It's a massive ego-destroying moment when somebody calls you a complete wit because, you made a tiny change to the game that you thought would make it better. It's difficult when people tell you that you're useless because of X, Y, and Z changes you make to the game. These things are difficult and soul-crushing at times, and you just got to rise above it because we do this because it's fun, right? That's why we make games. And it's not like we're, brain surgeons and we lose patients. We just lose customers. And sometimes they can be upset with us, but it's not the same thing. So it's not life or death here. So enjoy making games. Have fun making games. Finally, I think this point is, it's important to think about. Make sure people look forward and not always looking backward. If people are always looking at the last thing that happened in the game, then they tend to be negative. People, from a psychological point of view, people are always better at thinking about the future positively than they are thinking about the past. They remember the past quite often poorly. And people don't have perfect memories either. So you'll be able to turn your thumbs down into thumbs up, hopefully. Cool. Thank you very much for paying attention. I just want to, you can contact me on Twitter anytime. Funcom.com/jobs. We rarely get applicants from Norway, which is really weird, right? We put jobs out a lot, but a lot of people either don't apply or just don't. I mean, maybe people don't want to live in Oslo after, what Joe said about it. I don't know. But we really do get a lot of Norwegian people applying. I would argue that the company's probably in Oslo, we're probably about 60% Norwegian people and 40% foreigners like me. Men jeg snakker norsk, så det, ja. We don't get a lot of applicants, so it's from Norway, so it'd be nice to see people, so that's why I put it up there. Steam Spy is a fantastic resource, and it's the only insight you're going to get into any of the major platforms when it comes to game numbers. Xbox don't release numbers, PlayStation don't release numbers, Nintendo will never release numbers. Only Steam Spy, and that's because they're running their own system on the side. So that's the best source of information for figuring out these things. Cool. I think that's it. Does anyone have questions? Do we have a... Yeah, go ahead. Where's the mic?
Hey. Two-parted question. How long did it take from pre-production until the release on Early Access with
Conan?
Yeah.
Okay, you've made a bad assumption. There was no pre-production. No, it was a year. It was a year. We started working on the game in, we talked about the game in December 2015, right after the park launched. Park launched October, I remember, Halloween. The park launched in October 2015. We did a couple of months of prototyping different ideas, which I guess is pre-production, but it's not a real pre-production. And then we started working on Conan with the idea that we would launch in May 2016, because we're idiots. We thought that we could make a game in 5 months. That's never happened in the history of any sort of large-scale company that I can think of. But we thought we were going bankrupt in April, so we were trying to have a game ready for May. So yeah, and then we ended up launching in January the year after because our investors bailed us out, which is always one option we have that other people don't have, which I fully recognize. So.
Yeah, so the second part of the question is how do you estimate profit, like in the research? How do you estimate how big the profit could be when the production takes a year? Like, how do you compare yourself to?
We have roughly a fixed monthly cost on the company, which we try to reduce. Like we try to keep, so we know how much we cost per month to run our company, right? If that's and then we guess. Like, okay, if we sold 400,000 at price point $30 and Steam take 30% and Microsoft are roughly the same, they take 30%, PlayStation, like they all the big storefronts roughly take the same amount. So, and then we have to pay the Unreal Engine fee, which is a percentage, we have to pay the Microsoft fee, and then we guesstimate, okay, profitability would be in these categories in a low case, in a high case, in an average case, and we try to be pessimistic, super optimistic, and in between. It's actually, it's kind of funny, like Funcom had, we had this court case where the ex-CEO was being in trouble for market manipulation. But I mean, this is the method of prediction used by the gaming industry. And so that was, it was all, he was freed in the end, like there was no charge. He was freed of the charge, so it wasn't a big deal. But it's interesting because this is how you need to do it. You need to estimate a range. You say high case, low case, and hopefully fall somewhere in between. And if the low case looks like it will sustain our company, then it's a good bet for us, right? The low case needs to be good enough to sustain us for a while, right? So I guess that's the answer, hopefully.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. More questions? Mic's going around. I can sing while we wait. La la la.
So regarding early access, I mean, it is supposed to be a bug testing sort of deal. Yet people seem to respond fairly badly to finding bugs, which is weird. So in your experience now with Conan, how stable do you think a game should be before putting it out on early access?
Okay. I'll go a little bit into severity of bugs. So we rank bugs along lines of severity A, B, C, and then D. A severity A bug means that the client gets into a fail state and exits, or nobody can connect to a server. That would be a severity A bug. A severity B bug is shit happens in the game that breaks. And a severity C bug is it's shit happening in the game, but it's minor and probably people don't care that much about it. For example, a cloak clipping through their pants when they run would be a severity C bug. The server crashes every time somebody tries to connect to it would be a severity A bug. For an early access launch, I would say have no severity A bugs, but you can have as many severity B or C bugs as you like. Severity D bugs are suggestions for improvements to the game. So that's kind of how we do it. Everybody has their own methodology for this, but I would say severity A, no major stability problems. Yep. Cool.
So there were you have talked about a little about what?
Ta det på norsk hvis du vil.
Takk. Skal jeg ta på norsk?
Ja, vær så god.
Sånne feilantagelser om som du har gått gjennom tidene som du har gått som spillutvikler. Okay?
Now I didn't understand you at all. So
okay.
I think you're just fucking with me now, aren't you? You're just messing with my head. I think I speak Norwegian and you're like, yeah, try this on.
Probably my accent. But anyway. Sorry, brain freeze.
Yeah, it's fine.
We can take a break and come back.
Okay, cool. The reason I put a trigger warning at the start today, by the way, is last time I did a presentation, I described making games as like making pornography. You put the right people in the right room with the right mood. You give it time, and hopefully everybody comes together in the end. And if you try to do it on your own, all you end up with is a sticky hot mess. But anyway.
Sounds about right. So, like you're talking about early access, and you're talking about A-grade bugs, B-grade bugs, C-grade bugs, but what's your guys' method on doing Q&A before you go to early access? What's the process?
Okay, so this is this is actually one of the things we've been working on for many, many years. We have a QA team in the US office. So in North Carolina, Funcom has a branch there with about 50 people, 50, 60 people in Oslo. The North Carolina branch is where QA has traditionally been situated simply because QA people cycle in and out a lot. And so what we did before early access launch on Conan was we had QA on the game for about 8 months. So we had a lot of people, but they're a small team, they're only 7 or 8 people. And it's hard to do scale testing when we're talking about, at launch we sold, I've got to make that clear, we weren't expecting to sell that many in the first week, and therefore our server overloads, and we had a lot of stability issues that were just scale issues. We just weren't expecting them. So we had this US QA team, they were testing. We'd done several stress tests at load, which means that we'd done it with hardware and 40 plus people on the servers just to test how it felt. And we'd been optimizing our servers to make it work well. But that actually wasn't enough. So what we have done now, and for the Xbox and going forward for the PlayStation, is that there's companies that you can pay, and then you don't have to have it, because dev kits for consoles are super expensive, in case you guys haven't come to that. It's very expensive, and even for a company like Funcom, paying 10,000 kroners to get an Xbox for every person in the company as a dev kit is very difficult, right? It's a lot of money. So what we do is we pay, there's a company called Testronics that we're working with, and they can basically scale up and down testers for us. So we can say we need 300 people to play the game for a day on Xbox and just generate crash reports. So that's how we're doing it now. But that has been a process that has changed, because before we thought our own internal QA was enough, and it clearly wasn't. So That's, again, responding to feedback. But it's also, I guess, another thing that I was talking about with the whole money thing, right? Like this, we didn't have the money to pay Testronics to do this. Or we could have, but we would have had to, make sacrifices in other areas to get there, right? So.
Yeah, so you would have had to allocate the budget more to Q&A to actually be able to prevent more A-grade bugs when you started early access.
Yes, exactly. And we didn't necessarily have we thought we were okay. Like it wasn't like nobody releases an unstable game intentionally, or at least I hope not, right? And Funcom's always had this sort of horrible reputation for it. And I've been there. I've been there for Age of Conan launch. I've been there for Secret World launch. I've been there for Lego launch. And like there are bugs that we know about that we will fix in weeks, but usually it's not those bugs we know about that kill us. It's the ones you don't know about that'll get you. So, yeah, cool.
Okay, I think I have to stop you there.
Cool.
So
All right.
I need to move on.
Yeah, I don't know what time it is, so I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a couple of minutes over. But
Thank
you're
you.
here later, right? So
Yeah, I'll be around.
ask
Everyone
questions.
can get drunk with me later.
So save your questions for later.